You are listening to EP Culture Beat, the underground source of El Paso, Texas. One of the worst movies of all time was made in El Paso in 1966, Manos, The Hands of Fate. It is hard to watch but has become a cult classic. In this episode, we talk with one of the last surviving cast members. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Jackey Neyman Jones, and I played the child Debbie in the cult classic film Manos, The Hands of Fate. It was filmed in 1966 in El Paso, Texas.
What's it like to have been in what is considered to be one of the worst movies ever made?
Well, first of all, I say that I wasn't responsible because I was just a child.
Right.
But the other thing is, it's great because I'm an artist and it just suits me perfectly, and I honestly can't think of anybody else better suited for this job, so to speak.
You keep the legacy alive.
I do. It started off in 1966. There was this guy, Hal Warren. He was in theater with my dad. My dad was pretty much, he was like one of the rock stars of community theater back in the 60s and early 70s. And he played a lot of lead characters, and he was playing the lead in Henry IV. And this other guy, Hal Warren, was also in it, and Hal had written a script for a film that he had hoped to make, and he looked around at the cast and crew and saw pretty much everybody he wanted and approached them to make his film. Well, these are all theater actors, and they're all people aspiring to be more creative, and so they said yes, because he was quite the salesman. And they got together out in the desert out near, I think it's out near Isleta, and did this film in like 10 days. And nobody knew. Hal Warren just convinced everybody that he knew what he was doing, but he did not. And nobody saw anything because it happened so quickly. And then the premiere happened in November, and it was pretty much a shock to everybody that was trapped in the audience. It was a flop, as you can imagine, and the cast and crew pretty much separated as though they pulled off the heist never to be spoken of again. But for me, as a child, it was like the best summer of my life with my dad, and so I held on to those memories, but it disappeared. It was gone, and I looked for it for 27 years. I didn't look for it for 27 years, but it was gone.
Yeah. For
27 years. Until it showed up on Mystery Science Theater one day in January 1995, I believe, or 4. And my dad just happened to see it. My dad, by the way, played the master in the film. He was the lead character.
How old were you when Manos, The Hands of Fate was filmed?
I was 6. I turned 7 that summer.
So your role was that of the daughter of the couple?
Yes. And yeah, the poodle and the dog, or the poodle in the film belonged to Hal Warren. The dog that played the family pet, but the Doberman who played the master's dog was actually our family pet, so that was my dog.
Cool.
And my mother made the costumes. She made the master's robe and the wives' dresses. And my father, as an artist, made he made the set. He made the painting of the master and dog, the cauldron, the fire, Torgo's staff, all the hand sculpture. It was all my dad's work. He was a very talented artist. The film was titled Manos, The Hands of Fate because of that. It was originally titled Fingers of Fate.
Well, the design of that robe is it's become almost iconic. Did any of that thought go into it, or it was just like a costume that needed to be made at the moment?
It needed to be made. I still remember my parents laying out the fabric and designing it. I remember my mother designing and making the wives' dresses and adding that bit of red fabric that was supposed to be actually for modesty for the women. Didn't work, but yeah, that robe is definitely iconic. And my father never got his property back. He never got his painting back or the robe. The director took them home, and his son actually still has them and will never return them. But me, I'm an artist as well, and I do a lot of things. I produced the sequel to Manos, actually, which is much better than the original. And and I do sewing, and I've recreated the robe. I recreated Torgo's hand staff with a welding torch. I've recreated a lot of my dad's work. I've recreated the painting several times.
Wow. What do you remember most from the making of Manos? What still sticks out the most?
Actually, quite a lot. Because, like I said, 27 years went by, so I held on to these memories tight. And my high school friends still remember me telling stories about it. But I remember John Reynolds, who played Torgo. I remember hanging out with him in front of the house.
What was he like?
He was fairly small stature. He wasn't a very tall man. I think he was probably about 5'6", 5'7", maybe. But he was shy. He was a very intense person. What was he, only 24? My dad and he were friends. They kind of understood each other. They were very deep type people in a time when men weren't supposed to have deep emotion,
Yeah.
They were artists and poets, and they understood each other. My dad was older by about 6 or 7 years, I think. And he lived just down the street from us for a while. I remember going down there, my dad trying to just get him to come over, visit, to get out. But I think he was just, he had a lot of tragedy, a lot of deep sadness in him. I mean, he killed himself just, exactly 1 month before the premiere and 1 month after his 25th birthday. I remember the women, the wives, all sitting around talking in the evening. I remember that we kept our lunches in the refrigerator in the little kitchen there. It was like a little 50s refrigerator. And I just remember the camaraderie. I remember how exciting it was for a child to be up all night. I'd take little naps, but most of the filming was during the night because people had full-time jobs and such. So, nobody got paid for this,
Yeah. It was a passion project.
It was. And so I held on to all this, and I actually wrote a book a couple years ago, and I'm very proud to say that I'm 5 stars on Amazon.
Nice.
And 4 on Goodreads. But it's called Growing Up with Manos, the Hands of Fate, How I Was the Child Star of the Worst Movie Ever and Lived to Tell the Story. And so I did a lot of research on my book. You'd think that a 6-year-old, 7-year-old isn't going to remember a lot, but I always say it like this. If you think back on your life, your best birthday or family vacation or those moments crystallize, you might not remember things around it or that year, but you remember details about that, and that's what Manos, the Hands of Fate was for me. And when I started researching and finding other people to corroborate my stories, I was really amazed at how accurate my memories were, although from a child's standpoint. So what I'd like to do next, and not like to do, what I'm working on next is a script based on the stories in my book. And I'd like to do a film on the making of Manos, the Hands of Fate. And it's going to be pretty funny.
Just adding more to the legacy of this little film, which is pretty cool.
Well, El Paso is such a special place, and I tell that in the book. It's such a unique place, and the 60s in El Paso was unlike any other place that I've ever read about or that I know about. The geographic location, the art and culture in El Paso has always been there. It's a powerful thing. It's been years since I've been there, but the last time I was there in 2011, where when we did a screening at the El Paso Classic Film Festival, we did the restoration there. Great audience, by the way. But, El Paso has this vibrancy of culture and art, and I want to get that across on the screen of what that was like in the 60s. There was like the University of Texas, their film, their theater department was very strong, and then the Festival Theater, which is now, I think, the El Paso Playhouse, and then there was the Upstairs Theater downtown.
How long did you live in El Paso?
We moved there. I was born in Fort Worth. We moved there when I was 4, and I left when I was 13. My parents divorced, and my dad moved to California, and I followed him.
Any memories that stick out from your time in El Paso besides filming Manos?
Oh, yeah. We lived at the top of North Cotton Street and right up snug against the mountain. So as a kid, my parents were very bohemian, and we were the only white people in the whole neighborhood. My dad was director of the South El Paso Boys Club, and my mother was a teacher at Ben Milam School out at Fort Bliss. So I alternated between having some local friends and being pretty lonely because my family was so different. We had theater music. We had thunderous music coming out the windows, and my dad's art and sculpture. We were just different. Yeah.
Different is good.
So I spent a lot of time on that mountain. I could just go straight out the backyard and climb up that mountain to Scenic Drive. And those are some of my sweetest memories, is just hanging out on that mountain and exploring. Well, I've got to find a way to get back there. I want to do a screening of Manos, the Hands of Fate. I'd like to do it with the restoration, and I would do commentary, because the restoration is unlike the Mystery Science Theater version in that it's clearer and a larger frame. So you see things you could never see in the Mystery Science Theater version. Like my dad, when he holds up the robe, you can see his jeans rolled up underneath the robe. Or like when he's holding up Torgo's hand on fire, if you look below him, behind him, you can see the can of lighter fluid on the base of one of the columns.
A lot of movies nowadays don't have the man-made charm as much.
Yeah, it's a terrible movie, but boy, they sure tried hard.
Yeah, exactly, and that's cool. I think that's what's kept it afloat. That's what's given it legs. And
I just love so much that. Well, for one thing, I've met a lot of people who learned about Manos, younger people who learned about it at film school. It's taught in many film schools as everything not to do in filmmaking. And it inspires people. I love that it's in public domain. It never would have seen the light of day ever if it wasn't in public domain. And it has inspired things, everything from puppet theater, Manos, the Hands of Felt, to now where there's some people working on funding for a comic book and web series.
Cool.
About me, and I get to star in it. It's called Manos, the Debbie Chronicles, and it's my character 50 years later getting retribution on the evil that was done to her family.
Wow.
And, 2 coloring books. There's, video games. There's a couple of different video games. What else? There's so many things.
Yeah.
There was a play in Portland on stage, a comedy several years ago that I got to be part of.
Did you appear in any other movies after Manos?
Well, here's a funny thing. So my parents divorced. My dad moved to Southern California, and I followed him when I went to high school. And I had a very good theater department in my high school. My theater teacher invited the class one day to come in on a Saturday to be extras in a classroom scene for a film for a friend of his. So we did. Well, that film came out, and it's worse than Manos. It's way worse. And the crazy thing is, it has been done by riff tracks. So I've been in one movie that Mystery Science Theater did, and the other one, riff tracks. And that movie's called The Curse of Bigfoot.
Wow.
So I've been in two really horrid movies. But then, since then, I've had the opportunity to be in some independent film for different people, friends of mine, or people, I should say, who become friends of mine. And then 3 years ago, we got a group together and did a Kickstarter and raised $28,000, I believe it was, on Kickstarter, and we did the film Manos Returns. So we did a sequel to Manos, and we set out to make the best possible film we could, independently and very inexpensively. But our goal was to honor the Mystery Science Theater fans and to honor the original cast and crew. So my dad, who was still living, he died 2 years ago, but he was still living, and we filmed him. So he gets to be the master again. And that's another reason that I created Manos Returns personally, was I did it mostly for him, because he had never had the opportunity to engage fans directly. And he would I could tell him stories about things, and then I'd go back to the fans and go, the master approves, you know. And he loved that, but he didn't. I'd tell him stories and try and show him things, but he wasn't online. And so doing that was really great. In fact, I'm hoping we did get a little film of him coming to our cast and crew party. And the look on his face when he walked up and he saw everybody and the cameras and the smiles was like he couldn't have been happier if he was walking a red carpet in Hollywood. You know, to me, I'm so grateful we got that on film, because that's one of my favorite memories, you know, and seeing him just owning it when he was in costume and giving him that opportunity, you know, again, one last time, and giving him the opportunity to see what the legacy of Manos created, and that was really special.
Awesome.
And the sheriff has passed away, but his son plays our sheriff, and the woman who played my mother in the original is my mother again. And what else? Oh, in the original film, most of the women were either not credited or miscredited, because, you know, it's 1966 and women weren't that important anyway. They were just 6 wives. What the hell, you know?
Yeah.
So in researching my book, I not only found out who these women were and have contacted most of them, but I found the woman who did the vocals on the soundtrack. And it turns out, as horrible as the movie is, the soundtrack is actually pretty good. And she has been a jazz singer for over 50 years, like more like 60 years. So we got her to recreate her music for our film.
Nice.
So we really did everything we could to honor people, and we've shown it at a few places. We premiered it at Crypticon Seattle this year in May, and we've got a couple screenings that we're planning around the country, and we've done a few screenings, and so far the audience has been really supportive. So we're looking for a distributor now.
What's this one about?
This is Manos the Valley Lodge 50 years later.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a group of 4 people, 4 friends, that are going on vacation, and they take a wrong turn, and they end up at this otherworldly place.
Mm-hmm.
And they're still wives, but the wives are more like relics from the past. I mean, they're young. They're not like, old, but they're like in suspended time almost. Time just is different at this place. But this time, Debbie, me, 50 years later, I've been raised by the Valley Lodge, and because my mom and I got trapped there in the last movie.
Yeah.
So I'm now in charge of the place, and I'm not very pleasant. If you can imagine a child being raised by that group. And my mother, who is played by the original Maggie, Margaret, is she's kind of demented. She's like crazy. But she's crafty as well. She's learned a few things. I'm very proud of it. Like I said, it's low budget, but I think we did a really great job for what we had, and so many people brought so much to the table that it makes it bigger than it would have been just based on money,
Did Manos' appearance on Mystery Science Theater, was that the thing that ignited interest, or had there always been interest?
Nobody knew anything. So here's what happened.
Wow.
January, I can't remember the date. I think it was January 24th, 1995. My dad calls me up. I'm married. I have a child. My oldest child at that time was like a baby. Mm-hmm. And my dad calls me up. He's living on the Oregon coast. He says, "You'll never believe what I just saw on TV." Well, he was a Mystery Science Theater fan, so he's like taking a nap and kind of watching MST on a rainy January day, on the coast of Oregon. He's living on the coast of Oregon. So he's taking a nap, dozing off, and he hears some familiar music. He opens his eyes and sees himself on the screen.
Wow.
And he's just fascinated, so he watches it. Then he calls me and says this. So I turn on the TV because I knew it was on Comedy Central. Mm-hmm. And I knew there was an 800 number in the bottom corner of the screen because I always watch the station, So I called the number. I mean, you have to know, this is a Sunday afternoon, and now I'm calling the East Coast, which I didn't know at that time. And so I called the 800 number, and this guy answers the phone, and he says his name is Matthew, and that he's in the HBO offices in Manhattan. Mm-hmm. And I tell him, I said, "You just showed a movie that I've been looking for most of my life. My whole family was part of it. It disappeared, and you just showed it. Is there any way I can get a copy?"
Wow.
And you have to know, this is back on VHS days.
Yeah.
Right? Not even, this is VHS. And he says, "What was the name of it?" So I tell him. The line, to me, it sounds like the line goes dead. Like, I didn't know if he hung up on me or if we got a bad connection, but I'm like shaking because I've been looking for it my whole life, and I'm shaking. And all of a sudden he comes back and he goes, "Oh my God, are you Debbie?" Which was the character's name. And I was shocked, So we talked for a few minutes, and he says, "I just had it on my desk the other day, and that's our favorite bad movie here in the HBO offices." You have to know, I didn't have a clue that anybody had ever even heard of it for 27 years, and here's this guy telling me all this stuff. It was weird. So he mails me a copy, and I get it about a week later with a nice note. And I watched it by myself because who's going to want to watch this thing with me, So I watched it alone, and then I just put it away, and I was happy, and I thought that was the end of it. And then a few years go by, and, the internet dial-up happens.
Yeah.
And I get a computer, and I don't know, little by little, I start seeing chat rooms, and I start seeing it pop up just a little bit. But there's all these weird stories about people dying, and all the cast and crew have mysteriously disappeared, and so I start chiming in saying, "We're not dead. Here I am," and correcting the stories. That was my whole goal, was just to clean up the stories, because there was so much. I call it Manos mythology, and now I get to go to conventions as a special guest. And last month I got to host a burlesque, MST themed burlesque show in Portland, Oregon.
Cool.
I get to do some really fun stuff because of the...
It's like this movie has had many different lives.
Yes.
Where can people watch Manos, The Hands of Fate nowadays?
You can see it on YouTube for free. That's the Mystery Science Theater version.
Cool.
So I would suggest for people, if it's their first time, watch the Mystery Science Theater version, because it really is bad. I mean, it's a badge of honor if there's a lot of people that just cannot get through it.
What was it like presenting the film at the El Paso Plaza Classic Film Festival in 2011?
Yeah, that was the restoration.
Yeah.
The first screening of the restoration, and that to me was a whole different experience. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
And that restoration's been turned into a Blu-ray, right?
Yes, it has, with lots of extras. In fact, my dad was still living when all that was happening, so
nice.
There's extras with interviews with him, with me, and then there's an extra that I love so much. It's where my dad and I actually sit down and watch Manos and talk about it.
Cool.
For the first time since the premiere in 1966. My favorite part in that whole thing is where we're watching it, and he says something like, "Oh, Lord, this is terrible." And I go, "Well, yeah, Dad, it is known as the worst movie ever made." And he goes, No, this is awful.
Is the film still going through copyright issues? And do you have any say in that?
I have no say. The son of Hal Warren, he's the same one that has the robe and the painting. He's just never understood how to play well with others. He's been given many opportunities to be part of this, but he has this attitude that he should own everything and control everything, and I don't know why he feels threatened, but so he was trying to get the copyright for Manos Hands of Fate, and I opposed that and raised some money to try and battle that, but we were not able to raise enough money in the end. Anyway, the last thing I seen was his copyright did not go through. It was denied. So he may try again, but at this point, it doesn't matter. What can he do? He seems to think that people are making money on it, and he's missing out. Nobody is making money on this. I mean, I'm not making a living at this. If you follow me and you see all the things that I'm doing, my book, I make a little bit on that. I'm just not. I do a lot of work. I do it for the love of Manos. Although, I do want to at least get this in here, that I'm working on my YouTube channel right now.
Cool.
And it's my name, Jackey, Jackey, Neyman, Neyman Jones, Jackey Neyman Jones. And there's going to be a lot of different things to that, different channels within that, a lot of Manos stuff, and then my art, because like I said, I'm a professional artist, so there'll be my art. I'll be doing tutorials and just a whole lot of different things. I'll be selling some of the robes. Like I said, I've made robes, and I don't do it very often. It's so much work, so I just offer it occasionally. And then I'll make a few and go, oh, I'm not doing that again. And then 6 months later, I'll offer them again. So my YouTube channel is going to be the place where I can just kind of show people everything I do. Because if they had ADD, if they called you ADD back when I was in school, that'd be me. I'm just all over the map.
So, touching on your book a little bit, is it true that the movie was made because of a bet?
Yep, I got a whole chapter on that. Yeah, with Sterling Silliphant, who was the screenwriter for In the Heat of the Night.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, he was the screenwriter. He was working on Route 66. That's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
The show Route 66. Sterling Silliphant was working on that. And that's where he met Hal Warren, or that's where Hal Warren met him and made this bet about, you know, anybody can make a movie. I can make a movie, you know. But also, even without my book, I've been writing a blog for several years,
mm-hmm.
and that's that's Debbie's Manos on Blogspot.
What else is keeping you busy?
Oh my gosh. Well, doing my art, my own art, teaching classes,
Awesome.
My podcast, Jackie's Hand of Horror on
Cool.
SoundCloud.
Is that podcast all about horror movies?
No, it's just about a lot of different things. Like, I do it every 2 weeks, or I try to.
Mm-hmm.
I got so much going on. But, like, I did an episode on spiders. I've done an episode on Women in Horror Month, on puppets, all kinds of things. Just, zombie animals. That was a fun one. All kinds of things. I believe I think I'm on my 12th episode now. So we're starting to get the hang of it.
Why do you think the legacy of Manos, the Hands of Fate has endured?
Wow. You know, I don't know. I really don't. I think the costumes have a lot to do with it. You know, I don't think it could have endured if it didn't have those visuals,
Mm-hmm.
like the Torgo character and the Master for 2. But, you know, I have listened to people, I've talked to people, and even though I might be a little closer to the understanding of what the love of it is about,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's more, sometimes like meeting people at cons, the kinds of people I meet, I think it's more that this film shows you that no matter what, with something done with earnestness and love like this, that you never know. You just never know
Mm-hmm.
when something can endure. I don't know. Yeah. I honestly, I have worked on this for years. I just don't know.
Wow.
Anybody that tries to do it on purpose will fail.
I like that.
And you know, I'll leave you with this. This is my mantra. This is what I say, is that if you can't be the best, make the most of being part of the worst.
That's the end of the show. Thank you for listening. You can find this podcast on iTunes, GooglePlay Music, and Stitcher Radio. Be excellent to each other and party on.